The following account was recovered from a water-damaged journal found in the abandoned town of Coldwater Cove, 3 months after 127 residents vanished during the November 2019 nor'easter. No bodies were ever found. This is the last testimony of Aaron Mitchell, age 45. The coffee mug in my hand was Michael's, the one with the faded Red Sox logo he'd drunk from every morning before school. 6 weeks since the accident, and I still couldn't bring myself to put it away. Claire said I should, said keeping his things out like shrines wasn't healthy. But she didn't understand that every morning I held this mug, I could pretend, just for a minute, that he was still upstairs, that I'd hear his footsteps thundering down the stairs, late as always. The snow started falling around 2 p.m., and I thought about how Michael would have been excited. 18 years old, and he still got giddy about snow days. I graded papers at my kitchen table, American history essays about the Salem witch trials, ironically enough, when the storm began in earnest. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed. Not the normal howl of a nor'easter, but something that sounded almost vocal, almost formed into words if you listened too close. The kind of sound that makes your hindbrain light up with warnings your conscious mind tries to ignore. I watched ice crystals form on the inside of the windows, delicate fractals spreading like frozen veins. Beautiful and wrong. The house was well insulated. That shouldn't happen. But it was, spreading faster than physics should allow. Claire moved through the kitchen behind me, and I felt the distance between us like a physical cold. We'd barely spoken since Michael's funeral. Not arguments, just absence. 2 people occupying the same space, orbiting separate griefs. She'd been staying late at work more often. I told myself it was because the accounting firm was busy. There were always excuses. Coldwater Cove, our little fishing town, wasn't built for storms like this. The roads twist and turn through hills and cliffs, and when the snow hits with ice, it's not long before everything goes quiet. Phones go dead. Power flickers out. The town turns from a tight-knit community into an island. But this storm felt different, hungrier. That's when something outside caught my attention, made me set down Michael's mug and really look. When I opened the door to check the driveway, the cold hit me like a fist, but that wasn't what stopped me. The envelope was pinned under the porch light, and here's what made my stomach drop. There was no snow on it. Not a single flake. Everything else, the railing, the steps, the welcome mat, was buried under 4 inches. But the envelope sat pristine and white against the frost-covered wood, like it had appeared there seconds ago. Like someone had just walked up my porch steps in the middle of a blizzard and left it. I looked out at the driveway, the street beyond. No footprints. Not one. Fresh snow covered everything in an unbroken blanket. My hands shook when I picked it up, from the cold, I told myself. The cold, Aaron Mitchell, was written in ink that shimmered dark red under the porch light, like old blood. I stood in the kitchen, the letter between my numb fingers. Claire stood in the doorway. "What is it?" I didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. Because that phrase, "one of you promised me something," had triggered a memory I couldn't quite grasp. Something about Michael, maybe? In those last weeks before the accident, he'd been strange, secretive. Had he promised someone something? Had I? Claire crossed to me, took the letter. I watched her face as she read it, watched the color drain from her cheeks. "Who would do this?" she whispered. "In this storm, who would—" I don't know. But the handwriting looked familiar, not like someone I knew, but like something I'd seen before. In Michael's things, maybe. In the notebooks we'd packed away after the funeral, the ones I hadn't been able to open. Probably imagining it. Grief makes you see connections that aren't there, patterns in static. Probably. The wind carried a howl that sounded almost like a warning, and something told me this was just the beginning. The second letter appeared at dawn. I hadn't slept, just sat at the kitchen table, staring at that first message until the words stopped making sense. Claire had gone to bed around midnight, leaving me alone with the wind and my thoughts. The power had held, barely, but the lights flickered every few minutes like the house was taking labored breaths. Around 5 a.m., I got up to make coffee. That's when I saw it. On the kitchen table, right where I'd been sitting, same pristine white envelope. My name on the front. I hadn't heard anyone come in. The doors were locked, the windows sealed against the storm. But there it sat, 6 inches from where my elbow had been resting. My hands shook so badly I tore the envelope. The message inside made my heart stop. I know about the baby you buried in the woods, the one you never told anyone about. The world tilted. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. Claire and I named her even though she never took a breath, never opened her eyes. 22 years ago, early in our marriage, before Michael, before the life we built. The doctor called it incompatible with life, clinical words for the worst moment of your existence. We couldn't afford a funeral, could barely afford the hospital bills. So on a frozen January night, Claire and I wrapped her in a blanket and buried her in the woods behind my parents' old property. We planted a dogwood tree over the spot, never told anyone. Not my parents, not Claire's family, not Michael when he came along 2 years later. It was our wound, our private grief. No one knew. No one. I made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob, because suddenly Claire was there, hair disheveled, eyes bleary. "Aaron?" She saw the letter in my hand, saw my face. "What does it say?" I couldn't show her, couldn't speak, but she took it from my trembling fingers and read it herself. Her face crumpled. 22 years of carefully maintained composure shattered like ice. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. Who could possibly? I don't know. We never told anyone. We never." "I know." She looked at me with eyes full of terror, and I saw the question forming before she asked it. Did you tell someone?" "No, never. Did you?" She shook her head, but I saw doubt flicker across her face. I felt it too, that horrible suspicion. If neither of us told, then how? The wind rattled the windows, and for just a second, I swear I heard something in it. A voice. By noon, I'd heard from 6 neighbors, phone calls, frantic and hushed. "Bill Carmichael, from 3 houses down. Did you get one? A letter? Because I got one and it says things. Things I never told anyone." Sarah Hendricks, who ran the corner store. "My husband thinks I'm losing my mind, but there was an envelope on our kitchen counter this morning and it knew about..." She broke off sobbing. Tom Brennan, Michael's old baseball coach. His voice was just a rasp. "I can't talk about what it said, but Aaron, how did they know?" Then I realized, this wasn't about me, wasn't about Claire. This was the entire town. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the storm, ignoring Claire's protests. The snow was waist-deep in places, but I fought through it toward Main Street, toward the community center where people were gathering. The walk should have taken 5 minutes. Took me 20, pushing through drifts that seemed to actively resist me, like the storm itself didn't want me reaching the others. When I finally pushed through the doors, maybe 40 people were inside. 40 faces I'd known my whole life, and every single one looked haunted. "How many?" I asked the room. Everyone raised their hand, every single person. The silence that followed was heavier than the snow outside. These were people who'd shared potluck dinners, watched each other's kids grow up, survived nor'easters together for decades. Now they sat like strangers, each clutching their own terrible secret, each wondering who among them was responsible. "This isn't possible," Martha Crenshaw whispered. She was 73, had lived in Coldwater Cove her entire life. Letters don't just appear. People don't just know things. But they did know things. Impossible things. Personal things buried so deep that even spouses, even children, had never heard them whispered. That's when it hit me. Someone was watching. Someone knew. Outside, the storm continued its patient work, burying the town deeper with each hour. And inside the community center, 40 people sat in the growing dark, each one wondering if the person next to them was keeping the most dangerous secret of all. Who was the collector, and what did it want with the debts we'd tried so hard to forget? The third letter was waiting when I got home from the community meeting. This time it was taped to Michael's bedroom door. I stood in the hallway, staring at it, and felt bile rise in my throat. Whoever, whatever, was doing this had been in my house, in my son's room, where his baseball trophies still sat on the shelf, where his unmade bed still held the shape of him. The envelope had a rust-colored stain on one corner, just weathering from the storm, I hoped. I was good at lying to myself. The message: you stole $47,000 from your sister's trust fund to pay for Michael's tuition. She never knew why her mother's inheritance was gone. She died thinking your mother spent it before she passed. You let her believe that lie. My sister Karen, dead 3 years from ovarian cancer. At the funeral, drunk and grieving, she'd said, "At least Mom left me something. At least I got to use that money for the treatments." Except she hadn't. Because I'd stolen it, forged the documents, convinced myself it was borrowing, that I'd pay it back. But private high school tuition bled us dry, and then there was the baseball equipment, the college prep courses. The debt grew. Karen died never knowing the truth, never knowing I was the one who robbed her. I'd justified it 1,000 ways. Michael deserved opportunities. Karen was single, no kids. She didn't need it as much. I'd pay it back eventually. Lies, all lies. And now, Michael was dead too. All of it meant nothing. He'd died 6 weeks into his freshman year at Boston College, the school I'd stolen $47,000 to send him to. Some cosmic joke, some punishment I probably deserved. I sat on the floor outside Michael's room and cried for the first time since his funeral. Ugly, shaking sobs that felt like they'd tear me apart. Claire found me and held me while I fell to pieces. I didn't tell her. That night, she had her own letter to read. Claire told me about the affair at 2 a.m., sitting at the kitchen table with her own letter clutched in white-knuckled hands. "Aaron, there's something I have to say." I looked up from my own guilt spiral. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed. The letters know. They know everything. And I can't carry this anymore. Carry what? 5 years ago, when we were having trouble, when you were drinking too much and I felt so alone, there was someone at work, David, my boss. It lasted 6 months. The words hit like physical blows, each one landing, creating its own small explosion of pain. 6 months, I repeated numbly. I ended it, told him it was a mistake, changed jobs 3 months later to get away from him. It was never about leaving you. It was just... She was crying now. I was so lonely, Aaron. You were so far away. 5 years ago, when Michael was 13, when I taught summer school and worked extra shifts to pay off credit cards, when I came home exhausted and poured whiskey instead of talking. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want to hurt you. Because... Her voice broke. Because I thought if we could just get through it, if I could just be better, we could forget it happened. Did Michael know? God, no. No one knew. Just me and David. And whoever's sending these letters. She flinched. Yes. We sat in silence. The wind howled outside. The house creaked, and I felt our marriage, already fractured by grief, crack just a little more. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Aaron, I'm so sorry." Part of me wanted to rage, throw things, scream, make her feel the same pain. But I was too tired, too broken. And beneath the hurt, I felt something else. Relief. Because now I wasn't the only one carrying secrets. Now we were both guilty, both compromised, both trapped in the same net of shame and lies. I stole money from Karen, I heard myself say. For Michael's tuition, $47,000. She died not knowing. Claire's eyes widened. Aaron, so we're both liars. We're both terrible people. And maybe that's why this is happening. What do you mean? Maybe we deserve this. She reached across the table, took my hand. Her skin was ice cold. No one deserves this, she said. But her voice wavered, like she wasn't sure, like neither of us was sure anymore. The fourth letter came the next morning. It was pinned to Michael's gravestone. I'd gone to the cemetery alone, needing to escape the house and suffocating weight of revelations. The storm had subsided enough to make the walk possible, though snow still fell in lazy flakes. The cemetery was empty, silent. Fresh snow covered everything, making the graves look like gentle hills. Michael's headstone was new granite, still too clean, too unweathered. The engraving simple. Michael James Mitchell, 2001 to 2019, beloved son. I stood there, trying to find words, trying to apologize for things I couldn't name, for not being there the night of the accident, for every moment I was distant or distracted or drunk. Then I noticed it, a white envelope pinned to the top of the headstone with what looked like a railroad spike, driven right through the granite, which should have been impossible. The stone should have shattered. But there it was, envelope fluttering in the wind, that spike driven 6 inches deep into solid rock. My hands shook as I pulled it free. The spike came out easily, smoothly, leaving no mark. The message inside made the world go white. Your son was having an affair with Jennifer Holloway. She's 3 months pregnant with his child, the baby that will never meet its father. Jennifer Holloway, 34 years old, married to Bill Holloway, who owned the marina. Michael had worked there last summer, cleaning boats, doing maintenance. I'd met Jennifer a dozen times, blonde, pretty, always friendly. Always a little too friendly, I'd thought once, watching her talk to Michael. But I'd dismissed it. Michael was 18. She was married, older. It couldn't. But what if it was? What if my son had been sleeping with a married woman? What if that's why he'd seemed different those last weeks? Secretive, guilty. I vomited in the snow, heaved until there was nothing left, until I was gasping and shaking and dying inside. Because if it was true, if Michael had done that, then he died carrying that shame. Died keeping that secret. Died knowing he was about to destroy a marriage, wreck a family. Or maybe the letter was lying. Maybe this was just another manipulation, another way to hurt me. But I had to know. I had to find Jennifer Holloway. Jennifer's house was a mile from the cemetery. I walked it in a haze, snow crunching under numb boots. When she answered the door, her face went white. Aaron? What are you? Were you sleeping with my son? The words came out flat. Dead. She blinked, stepped back. What? No, Were you? Aaron, I don't know what you've heard, but just tell me the truth. I need to know the truth. She looked past me, checking if neighbors were watching, then opened the door wider. Come inside, please. The house was warm, too warm. She led me to the kitchen, hands fidgeting with her robe's tie. I got a letter, she said quietly. This morning. It claimed I was pregnant with Michael's baby, that I'd been having an affair with him. And were you? No. She met my eyes. No. Michael was a sweet kid, but we never... Her voice cracked. Bill got the same letter. He's at his brother's house now. I studied her face, looking for lies, looking for guilt. All I saw was fear. "How many months pregnant are you?" I asked. I'm late. 3 weeks late." "Get a pregnancy test." I don't have one." "Don't lie to me." I looked down at the letter, at the postscript I hadn't noticed before. "Check the upstairs bathroom trash, the one she took an hour ago." I read it aloud. Her face went gray. She didn't need to check. "It's positive," she whispered. "I'm pregnant." The room spun. "But it's Bill's," she said quickly. "It has to be." "When was the last time you slept with your husband?" Her silence was the answer. "I swear we never did anything," she whispered. "I don't know how this is possible." But I saw it in her eyes. The same thing I'd felt reading about my own sins. Doubt, not certainty. Just the horrible, creeping doubt that maybe this was true, that maybe she'd done something she couldn't remember, that maybe the letters were revealing truths we'd hidden even from ourselves. "I need to go," I said. "Aaron, please." But I was already walking out, back into the storm, back into the nightmare. Because if Jennifer was pregnant and it wasn't her husband's, then whose was it? That night, the temperature dropped to 20 below. The power finally gave up around 8 p.m., plunging the house into darkness so complete it felt like being buried alive. Claire lit candles. I found flashlights. We moved like ghosts through rooms that felt increasingly unfamiliar, like the house itself was changing in the dark. Around midnight, I heard it. Footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate, the creak of wood under weight. I grabbed the flashlight, moved to the front window. The beam cut through darkness and snow. A man stood in my yard, tall, maybe 6.5 feet, wearing a heavy wool coat that looked decades old, the kind fishermen wore in storms. Hat pulled low, obscuring his face. He stood perfectly still, snow accumulating on his shoulders and hat brim, like he'd been standing there for hours. "Claire," I whispered, "call 911. The phones are dead, remember?" "Right, the storm. Of course." I watched the figure. He didn't move, didn't approach. Just stood there, facing the house. "Who is that?" Claire's voice cracked. "I don't know." We watched for 5 minutes. 10. The figure never moved, never shifted weight, never brushed snow from his shoulders. Then, slowly, he raised his head. And even through the storm, even in the darkness, I saw his face. But the proportions were off. The smile too wide. He raised one hand, pointed directly at me. Then he was gone, not walked away, not moved into shadows, just gone. One moment, standing in my yard, the next moment, empty space and falling snow. "Did you see?" Claire started. "Yes." "What was—" "I don't know." Claire was acting strange. It started an hour after we saw the figure. She kept looking at me with eyes that held something between love and terror. "Aaron, I need to tell you something." "Claire, not now." "No, I need to. Because if I don't—" Her voice broke. "The letters, they're not wrong. The affair. But there's more." My stomach dropped. "More?" "Jennifer, we were close. We were planning to leave, together." Tears streamed down her face. "Before Michael died. Before everything fell apart. Everything shifted." "You were leaving me for Jennifer?" "Yes, I'm sorry, but the letters know everything, Aaron. If I don't confess it all." "Then what? Then he'll take me." "He? The man outside?" She nodded, face white. "I can feel him, waiting. He's waiting for me to try to hide it. But if I confess everything, if I bring it all into the light, maybe—" "Claire, this is insane." "I love you!" she screamed it. I love you and I'm sorry, and I need you to know that whatever I did, whatever I was planning, I love you." Then she stopped. Just stopped. Her face went slack, eyes wide. She stared at something behind me. I turned. Nothing there. But when I turned back, Claire was different. Her skin had gone gray, her lips blue. Ice crystals formed on her eyelashes, spreading across her cheeks like frozen tears. "Claire?" She didn't respond, didn't blink. I grabbed her shoulders. Her skin was frozen, rigid. Her eyes focused on me one last time. Her mouth moved, forming words with no breath behind them. "I'm sorry." Then she fell. I caught her, lowered her to the floor, pressed my ear to her chest. Nothing, no heartbeat, no breath. She was dead, and her body was frozen solid, like she'd been dead for hours, like she'd been buried in ice. I don't remember screaming, but I must have. My throat was raw when I finally stopped, when I looked down at my wife's frozen corpse and understood. She'd confessed, brought her secrets into the light, and the collector had taken her anyway. The point was payment, and Claire had just paid in full. I carried Claire's body to the couch, couldn't leave her on the floor. I sat beside her. Time felt broken. Then I heard the front door open. Footsteps in the hall. The figure appeared in the doorway. It was Michael, not wearing Michael's face, not pretending to be Michael. The scar above his left eyebrow, the way he stood with his weight on his left foot, the Red Sox t-shirt he'd been buried in. But Michael's eyes had never been that still, that empty. I stood, took a step toward him. He smiled. It was Michael's smile, the same crooked incisor, the same dimple on the left side. But it held too long. 5 seconds, 10, 30, just standing in my hallway, smiling Michael's smile, not blinking. "What do you want?" He tilted his head. The movement was wrong, too smooth, like his neck was on a swivel. Then he raised one hand and pointed at Claire's body. His mouth moved. It was Karen's voice, my dead sister's voice. "You took from me." I stepped back. His mouth moved. The doctor's voice from 22 years ago. Incompatible with life. Then Michael's voice, but younger. 6 years old. "Daddy, why are you sad?" The voices kept coming, overlapping. My mother, my father, students I'd taught, people from town, all speaking through Michael's unmoving smile. Promises. Debts. What you owe. I understand now. Not punishment. Collection. We promised. We hid. Now we pay. Hands shaking, hard to hold pen. Michael is still watching. How many other towns? Are we special or just? The handwriting degrades to illegible scratches. The final legible words appear to be "sorry," repeated several times, increasingly malformed. 3 days later, when the storm finally broke and the National Guard made it through the drifts, they found Coldwater Cove empty. Not abandoned. Empty. The main street was pristine, snow-covered but undisturbed. No tire tracks, no footprints, not a single sign that anyone had left. Every house was locked from the inside. Every car sat in its driveway, covered in snow. Every building stood intact, lights off, doors closed. But no people. It's like they all just vanished. Copy that. Continue search. Check every structure. They did. 127 residents, gone. They found meals half-eaten on tables, TVs still on, batteries dead, beds unmade, coffee cups still on counters, a child's toy left on a living room floor. In Aaron Mitchell's house, they found his wife on the couch. The ice crystals in her eyelashes, the blue-gray tint of prolonged hypothermia. Except the house had a working fireplace, wood pile stacked beside it. No reason for her to freeze to death in her own home. The medical examiner's preliminary report was baffling. Subject appears to have frozen solid from the inside out, cause unknown. They found 14 other bodies, all frozen in the same impossible way, all with the same expression, eyes wide, mouths open, like they'd seen something that stopped their hearts. Jennifer Holloway was found frozen in her bathtub, 3 months pregnant. The autopsy confirmed the fetus shared no DNA with her husband. The father's identity remains unknown. The other 112 residents were never found. No blood, no signs of struggle or exodus, just gone. The FBI investigated for 6 months, brought in profilers, forensic teams, anthropologists, tested for environmental toxins, biological agents, radiation, interviewed family members, checked financial records, looked for any indication of a cult or mass suicide pact. Nothing. The official report concluded, unexplained mass disappearance, no evidence of foul play, no evidence of voluntary departure. Case remains open. Unofficially, Agent Marcus Webb, lead investigator, included a note in his personal files. Something happened in Coldwater Cove, something that doesn't follow any investigative framework I know. The town didn't evacuate. The residents didn't leave. They were taken. By what or by whom, I cannot say. But I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I've never seen anything that scared me like those empty streets, like walking through a photograph, like the whole town held its breath and never let it out. Recommend case closure. Recommend we don't look any further. Some questions shouldn't be answered. The town was sealed off. Too dangerous, they said. Structural concerns from the storm. But the real reason never made the official reports. Every investigator who spent more than a few hours in Coldwater Cove reported the same thing. They'd started hearing whispers in the wind. 3 investigators requested transfers. 2 took early retirement. One had a nervous breakdown and checked himself into psychiatric care, babbling about the man in the heavy dark coat and promises that can't be broken. The town was left to rot. And on cold nights, when storms roll in from the Atlantic, local fishermen report seeing lights in Coldwater Cove, seeing shadows moving through empty streets, seeing a tall figure in a heavy wool coat standing on the town's main street. Epilogue, the Coldwater Documentation Project. Excerpted from American Ghost Towns, The Unexplained Vanishings by Dr. Rebecca Cole, published 2023. 4 years after the Coldwater Cove incident, I finally obtained permission to visit the town. It required signing a dozen liability waivers and being escorted by a state trooper who clearly didn't want to be there. But as a folklorist specializing in American disappearance phenomena, I couldn't resist. The town looked exactly as the investigators described, frozen in time. A photograph of normalcy that had somehow stopped being real. But what drew me to Coldwater Cove wasn't the disappearance itself, though that was fascinating enough. It was the letters. During my research, I obtained copies of 43 letters found in residents' homes. Each one revealed secrets, yes. But more interesting was the pattern. Every letter mentioned a promise that had been broken, and every letter was written in the same handwriting that forensic analysis determined wasn't written by hand at all. The ink was applied with perfect mechanical precision, as if printed. But no printer could replicate the subtle variations in pressure, the slight tremors that suggested not humanity, but an approximation of it. Something trying to write like a human, and almost succeeding. I interviewed family members of the missing. They all reported the same thing. Their loved ones had been keeping secrets. Big ones, painful ones, the kind that corrode relationships from the inside. Aaron Mitchell's sister-in-law told me, Aaron was a good man, but he carried so much guilt about his sister, about his son, about every choice he made. I tried to tell him, we all carry guilt. That's part of being human. But he wouldn't let it go, wouldn't forgive himself. Claire Mitchell's sister said, Claire was trapped in a marriage that wasn't working. She wanted out, but couldn't bring herself to leave. So she had affairs, made plans, but never followed through. She was stuck between the life she had and the life she wanted, and that's a kind of hell. The more I learned, the more I understood. Coldwater Cove wasn't a random tragedy. It was a culmination, a town where everyone was hiding something, where the weight of accumulated lies had grown so heavy that someone came to collect. The locals have a name for it now. They call it the Reckoning, and they know it could happen elsewhere. I've documented 17 similar cases over the past century. Greystone, Montana, 1956. Entire mining town disappeared overnight. Investigation noted unexplained correspondence in several residences. Harper's Ferry, Maine, 1987. 41 people missing. FBI found evidence of systematic revelation of private information before disappearance. I call it the collector phenomenon. Others in my field dismiss it as coincidence. Confirmation bias, mass hysteria documented after the fact. But I've seen the letters, I've walked those empty streets, and I've started noticing something disturbing. It's happening more frequently, because here's what keeps me awake at night. In our modern age, with social media, smartphones, instant communication, we've never had more ways to connect. But we've also never been more isolated, never kept more secrets, never maintained more elaborate facades. We curate our lives, edit our truths, present carefully constructed versions of ourselves while hiding the parts we're ashamed of. We're all carrying weight we think no one can see. But that night, in my hotel room 30 miles away, I found an envelope on my bedside table. White, pristine. My name written in that too-perfect handwriting. I didn't open it. I burned it instead, along with all my notes on Coldwater Cove, deleted my files, told my publisher I was abandoning the project, because I realized something that the residents of Coldwater Cove learned too late. Some debts are better left unpaid. Some promises are better kept, and some truths are better buried deep where collectors can't find them. I hope. Appreciate you tuning in for the chills. Hope this helped you unwind. Share your story ideas in the comments and subscribe to become part of our nocturnal crew. Until next time, take care.